The defendant may think she destroyed Lulu and Leo, but she is a failure in this too. Lulu and Leo are powerful forces. They are two stars now that will always lead us forward.
We are so sad that we won't get to see them grow up. I had simple fantasies of proudly cheering Lulu and Leo on as they became these great people.
I'm very sorry for everything that happened. But I hope that no one goes through what I have gone through. I ask for a great deal of forgiveness to God, to Marina, to Kevin. I wish my family, I told my family that I did not feel well.
New York City is a place of noise, honking horns, chatter on sidewalks, the rumble of trains beneath the streets. But on October 25, 2012, in a building on West 75th Street near Central Park, the sound that cut through the evening wasn't ordinary. It wasn't part of the city's endless rhythm. It was a scream. Marina Crim had just returned from her daughter Nessie's swim lesson, tired but content. She held her little girl's hand as they walked back into their building. To Marina, the day felt normal, unremarkable. She exchanged quick greetings with neighbors, carried Nessie's damp towel, and thought of what they might make for dinner. But normality is fragile. It can collapse in a single moment. As the elevator doors slid open, Marina noticed something: silence. Not the cozy quiet of home, but the suffocating silence that warns of absence. Her two older children, Lulu and Leo, were supposed to be there, waiting with their nanny. Instead, the hallway was still. Silence unsettles parents because it contradicts what they know. Children fill homes with noise, giggles, complaints, questions. When that noise is gone, it is as if something vital has been extinguished. Marina may not have had words for it then, but she felt it. Something was wrong. Then came the scream. A neighbor described it as primal, not simply loud, but raw, dredged from the deepest part of human existence. It was the kind of sound that forces your body to react before your brain understands. People in the building stopped mid-step. Some froze. Others rushed toward the sound. What makes the primal scream unforgettable is its universality. You don't need to know the details to understand it. It communicates grief, terror, and helplessness in a way words never can. That scream is, in many ways, the true beginning of this story. It marked the moment when one family's nightmare spilled into the consciousness of an entire city. Marina and Kevin Crim are, by most measures, a picture of modern stability. Both grew up in California before carving lives in New York City's hum of ambition. Kevin's role in digital media at CNBC keeps him on the move. Marina, a former kindergarten teacher with a fine arts background, now pours her energy into raising their 3 children. The children give the family its center of gravity. Lulu, 6, is bright and spirited. She loves art and dance. Leo, 2, has the round-cheeked wonder of a toddler tasting the world. His second birthday, documented with photos and short posts, has the warmth of a family that takes joy seriously. Nessie, the youngest, is Marina's little sidekick. Swim lessons, small rituals, the rhythm of days. Marina keeps a family blog, a collage of drawings, museum visits, small triumphs. It's a tender archive of a household that, from the outside, seems not merely doing fine, but flourishing. Narratives of crime often begin with dysfunction. Here, what amplifies the tragedy is the opposite: love, attention, structure. The Crims did not neglect their children or outsource parenting. They curated a childhood. That truth is part of why this case broke New York's heart. When Marina first met Yoselyn Ortega, the introduction seemed natural, even providential. Ortega's sister, also a nanny, approached Marina at a ballet class and asked if she needed help. At the time, Marina and Kevin were still adjusting to life in New York and considering childcare options. A reference check came back positive, and the Crims made a decision they believed was safe. For the next 2 years, Ortega was in their home nearly every day. She became Josie to the children, a nickname that softened her presence into the folds of family. There are photos of her smiling on vacation, arm around Lulu, sharing meals with extended relatives. In February of 2012, the Crims even traveled to the Dominican Republic and stayed with Ortega's family. Marina later wrote on her blog about meeting Josie's amazing familia, calling the trip wonderful. The Crims did what any careful parents might do. They opened their home, shared their lives, and trusted. Ortega was in photos of birthdays, day trips, school pickups, woven into the ordinary fabric of daily life. Trust, when extended, reshapes boundaries. The line between employee and family blurred, as it often does in domestic work. This isn't unusual. Many parents who hire caregivers find themselves relying on more than labor. They rely on presence, consistency, emotional connection. But here lies the danger. When trust is absolute, betrayal becomes total. The Crims could not imagine Ortega as anything but safe. And perhaps that blindness was precisely what made them vulnerable. It began as an ordinary Thursday. Marina took 3-year-old Nessie to her swim lesson, leaving Lulu and Leo in Ortega's care. Nothing seemed unusual. On her way out, she spoke with neighbors, smiled, moved through the rhythm of motherhood in Manhattan. Hours later, however, something felt wrong. Marina sent messages to Ortega. "Where are you? Where's Lulu?" But no reply came. Texts sat unread, a silence that grew heavier by the minute. When Marina and Nessie returned home, the apartment was dark. No cartoons humming from the television, no scattered toys or running feet. The stroller sat in its usual place, Lulu's bag untouched by the door. Stillness pressed into every corner of the space. Marina tried to reassure herself. Maybe they had gone out unexpectedly. She asked the doorman, but he shook his head. No one had left. With growing dread, she climbed the stairs once more, Nessie's hand clasped in her own, and opened the apartment door again. In hindsight, the signs of unease feel glaring. Unanswered texts, a quiet home, a stroller waiting, but in real time, parents often rationalize. Maybe they're late. Maybe the phone died. The human mind resists catastrophe. It clings to ordinary explanations until the truth forces its way in. The Crim apartment was familiar territory to Marina. She knew every corner, every mark on the walls, every squeak of the floorboards. But as she stepped inside that evening, the space betrayed her. Darkness filled the rooms. An unnatural quiet hung in the air. The stroller was in its usual place. Lulu's school bag rested by the door. Signs of routine were there, but the people who gave them meaning were not. She called out. No answer. She texted again. Still nothing. She took Nessie by the hand, walked further inside, heart pounding now against her chest. Then she saw it, a line of light beneath the bathroom door. That sliver of light, so ordinary in any other moment, became a signal of dread. Parents know the rhythm of their homes. When the rhythm breaks, instinct warns them. Marina's instincts were screaming. She opened the door. In an instant, her world fractured. Inside, the unimaginable, her 2 children in the bathtub, motionless. And standing nearby was Yoselyn Ortega, the woman Marina had invited into her home, trusted with her most precious treasures, was now holding a knife, her own body wounded. For Marina, time seemed to collapse. Her brain could not reconcile what her eyes saw. In her testimony later, she described only fragments. Her daughter's eyes open, the overwhelming red, Ortega's vacant stare. The human mind often shields itself in trauma, offering fragments instead of a whole picture. But even fragments were enough to destroy her. She screamed, the kind of scream that tore through the building, summoning neighbors, the doorman, strangers who would never forget the sound. What Marina encountered was not just loss, it was betrayal layered onto loss. The pain of losing a child is unbearable on its own, but to lose them at the hands of someone you trusted multiplies the horror. It dismantles the very concept of safety. From that day on, Marina's life was divided into 2 timelines, before the bathroom door, and after. News of the tragedy spread quickly. Kevin Crim, returning from a business trip, received a voicemail from Marina filled with screams. By the time he reached the building, police officers met him at the entrance. They told him what no parent should ever hear, or say. Neighbors who witnessed Marina's collapse described it as unbearable. She clutched Nessie as though the child's very breath was the last thing tethering her to the world. Officers shielded her from the cameras gathering outside, draping a white sheet as she was escorted into an ambulance. The city itself seemed real. New Yorkers are no strangers to crime, but this was different. It had not happened in an alley or a dark street. It happened in a bright apartment, within a family that embodied love and stability. It felt incomprehensible. Vigils formed outside the building, flowers, stuffed animals, and handwritten notes piled against the walls as strangers struggled to put words to their grief. The shock was collective because it shattered assumptions. Wealth, education, neighborhood, vigilance. None of it prevented this. The Crim family's pain became a mirror for every parent's deepest fear that trust could turn lethal without warning. And when tragedy strikes the heart of a city like New York, the wound is shared far beyond the family alone. As investigators pieced together the hours leading to the tragedy, their attention shifted toward Yoselyn Ortega herself. How could a woman so entwined in the family's daily life carry out something so devastating? Ortega was 50 years old, born in Santiago in the Dominican Republic. She had moved to the United States years earlier, eventually gaining citizenship and working as a nanny in Manhattan. To outsiders, she seemed quiet, reserved. To the Crims, she was Josie, almost part of the family. But behind the composed surface, her life was unraveling. Neighbors recalled that in the months before the killings, she appeared thinner, more agitated, and increasingly withdrawn. She had recently lost her Bronx apartment and was forced to move in with her sister. Money weighed heavily on her. She had brought her teenage son from the Dominican Republic and hoped to send him to a private school. The first year's tuition had been covered by a relative, but Ortega was expected to cover the rest, and she couldn't. To make ends meet, she sold personal belongings on the side. Then came tensions in her work. Ortega reportedly grew resentful when asked to take on additional household chores beyond childcare. She told acquaintances, "I'm paid to watch the children, not to clean." Days before the tragedy, she had even asked to see a psychologist. A friend's wife accompanied her to the appointment, where Ortega spoke of stress, anxiety, and feelings of failure. These details sketch a portrait not of sudden madness, but of a slow erosion, financial strain, isolation, professional resentment. Still, millions face similar pressures without committing violence. That's what makes this case so difficult to process. Stress may explain fragments of her mental state, but it cannot excuse or rationalize the destruction of two innocent lives. The boundary between hardship and horror remains one only Ortega crossed. The night of the killings, Ortega survived her self-inflicted wounds, bleeding heavily. She was rushed to New York Presbyterian Hospital under police guard. Doctors found her injuries had missed major arteries. She was stabilized, sedated, and later handcuffed to her hospital bed. When she regained partial consciousness, she communicated by mouthing words or pointing to letters on an alphabet board. Her statements were unsettling. She claimed she had been overwhelmed, that she was expected to do everything, childcare and housework, and felt cornered. Detectives pressed her, but her answers were fragmented, at times incoherent. Family members insisted they had never seen signs she could be violent. Others, however, admitted she had seemed increasingly nervous, detached, and not herself. Meanwhile, police secured the crime scene. 2 bloodied knives were recovered, one from the bathroom sink, another from the hallway. Blood stained the walls and floor. Officers described it as total carnage, an image that would stay with them for the rest of their careers. By the following day, the New York Police Department announced the case as a double homicide investigation. Ortega, though still hospitalized, was officially under arrest for the murders of Lulu and Leo Crim. This phase illustrates how quickly perception shifts. To the Crims, Ortega had been family. To neighbors, she was a quiet, somewhat distant woman. To police, overnight, she became a suspect in one of the most shocking crimes in recent New York history. It raises the haunting question, do people truly transform in moments of collapse? Or do shadows linger long before anyone chooses to see them? Years later, the courtroom became the stage for an agonizing debate. Was Yoselyn Ortega evil, or was she ill? The prosecution's case was methodical. They emphasized planning. Ortega had taken not one but 2 knives from the kitchen. She chose the bathroom, the most secluded room in the apartment, reducing the risk of interruption. She waited until Marina left, ensuring she'd be alone with the children. These were not the actions of someone detached from reality, they argued, but of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Prosecutors also presented evidence of resentment. Ortega, they said, had grown bitter. She complained about being asked to do extra chores. She envied Marina's comfortable life. She resented her own struggles with housing and tuition for her son. These grievances, prosecutors argued, simmered until they erupted in violence. The defense countered with a portrait of Ortega as a lifelong victim of untreated mental illness. They described hallucinations, voices urging her toward harm. A mind fractured long before October 2012. To them, Ortega wasn't in control. She was swept away by psychosis. The trial was not just legal, it was emotional theater. Marina Crim testified, her voice trembling as she described the bathroom scene. At one point, she turned directly toward Ortega and shouted, "You're evil." Kevin testified too, recalling the last time he saw Lulu and Leo at the hospital, their faces still angelic despite what had happened. Jurors cried openly. One asked to be dismissed, unable to continue after seeing photographs. Ortega sat largely still, sometimes reacting oddly, smiling when she shouldn't, staring blankly at others. To her attorneys, these were signs of illness. To prosecutors, they were calculated performances. This clash, evil versus insanity, is one of the oldest debates in law and philosophy. Do mental struggles absolve responsibility, or do deliberate actions, even if colored by distress, prove intent? New York's standard for insanity is strict. It's not enough to show illness. One must prove the defendant didn't know right from wrong. In this case, the sheer deliberateness of Ortega's actions made the insanity claim nearly impossible to accept. And so, jurors were left with the simpler, if harsher, conclusion: she knew, and she chose. After 2 months of testimony, jurors deliberated for 2 days. Behind closed doors, they struggled. Some initially leaned toward the possibility of illness, others toward deliberate malice. Voices were raised, tears shed. One juror later admitted, "It was the hardest decision of my life." In the end, they returned united, guilty on all counts. Ortega was convicted of both first and second-degree murder. The Crim sat in the front row as the verdict was read. Kevin closed his eyes. Marina clutched his hand. Ortega remained nearly still, only dabbing her eyes once with a tissue. For the Crims, the verdict did not restore what they had lost, but it guaranteed Ortega would never walk free. At sentencing, the prosecution demanded the maximum, life without parole. Kevin spoke with quiet fury, calling Ortega an evil and utterly dangerous narcissist. He begged the judge to ensure she would never see freedom again, so no other parent would suffer as they had. Marina followed, her words sharper. Ortega, she said, had failed even in trying to destroy their family. Lulu and Leo are powerful forces. They are stars now, and they guide us forward. When it was her turn, Ortega spoke through a translator. She asked for forgiveness, said her life was in God's hands, but her words landed hollow. The judge delivered the final word, life in prison without parole. He called Ortega's crime pure evil and praised the jury for rejecting the insanity plea. With the bang of the gavel, Ortega's fate was sealed. Sentencing hearings are often where justice and emotion collide. In this case, there was no room for leniency. The verdict was less about punishment than protection, ensuring Ortega could never harm again. Yet for the Crims, true justice was impossible. No sentence could return Lulu and Leo. What remained was survival and the choice to channel grief into something greater. In the aftermath of the trial, the Crim family faced the impossible: how to live inside a story that had stolen so much. Marina and Kevin could never return to the apartment where their lives had fractured. For a time, even simple routines felt unbearable. And yet, slowly, they chose a path forward, not by forgetting Lulu and Leo, but by carrying them into the future. In 2013, the Crims announced the creation of the Lulu and Leo Fund, a nonprofit supporting arts and science education for children. Lulu had loved her art classes, her drawings bursting with color and imagination. Kevin and Marina wanted to give other children the same joy, turning their children's passions into a gift for countless others. We want Lulu and Leo to be remembered as the sweet, creative, fun-loving children that they were, they wrote. The family also supported legislation aimed at tightening background checks for caregivers, particularly addressing false references. They believed that no family should be misled when choosing someone to trust with their children. In time, the Crims welcomed more children into their family, Felix and later another son. Each birth, they said, brought a sense of connection to Lulu and Leo, who remained present in gestures, in laughter, in the echoes of family life. On anniversaries, Marina wrote openly about grief, but also about resilience, about choosing to honor life even when scarred by loss. What endures in this story is not only horror, but transformation. The Lulu and Leo Fund stands as testament that even in devastation, meaning can be forged. For Marina and Kevin, resilience was not about erasing what happened. It was about ensuring their children's names carried light instead of only darkness. For the wider world, the Crim case remains a cautionary tale about trust, about unseen fractures in those we invite into our homes. Yet it is also a reminder of human dignity, that from pain so deep it nearly silenced them, two parents chose to build, to create, to inspire. The story of the Crim family and Yoselyn Ortega will always evoke grief and disbelief. It is a story of trust betrayed, innocence stolen, and lives irreparably altered. But it is also a story of love so profound it refuses to be buried beneath tragedy. When we speak of Lulu and Leo, it should not only be of how they died, but of how they lived with joy, creativity, and light. Their legacy, carried by their parents, is one of resilience. And in that resilience lies a truth worth remembering. Even in the shadow of evil, humanity can choose hope.